Got extra in my bowl.
You see that line there? That's your centre point.
Okay.
So, yeah, cool.
Never work with children, pets, or women wearing hoods, apparently.
And as fast as this wonderful series has begun, and it seems like just 2 minutes ago.
Began.
Yes. No.
Made me feel claustrophobic. That's the thing with gloves. Anyway, gone on about gloves enough, haven't I? Yeah, halfway through.
Amazing. Now,
May. Don't say anything, anybody. We're very much enjoying it. I give in with my hood. That you think looks like it needs some speckles. A little bit of emerald really makes it zippy. Oh, do you remember, sorry?
welcome everybody to the Bakery Bears video show featuring my favourite blanket.
Yay!
And as fast as this wonderful series has begun, and it seems like just 2 minutes ago.
Begun.
Yes. No, it's the cool way of speaking. As fast as this new show has begun, today, when today's episode finishes, it's the halfway point.
Halfway?
I genuinely can't believe it.
No.
I mean, it seems like a moment ago that we started filming it.
It does, actually, it does.
And terrifyingly, we started filming it at Christmas.
We did. And we're halfway through. I know that we're only in May, actually, now, aren't we? But we're sort of into June's colour now with regards to the flowers and the dyeing and everything. So, halfway through.
Amazing. Now, today's colour, I'm fascinated by, to be honest.
Okay.
Because it's so rare.
Right.
Yes, isn't it?
What's that?
Blue, in nature.
Oh,
yes.
I thought we were talking about the colour of the show, like Horatio.
No, we just mentioned my favourite blanket. My favourite blanket has a colour.
Yes.
Welcome to the Bakery Bears video show. You present a segment within it called My Favourite Blanket.
I'm with it now.
And you dye up something special. And today it's something lovely.
He's going to get a slap in a minute.
No, I was helping.
Yeah, you've helped.
Okay. You've helped too much.
The flower colour is blue. Oh, my favourite, because you very rarely see a true blue in nature.
I love you.
Yeah, I know. I did feel a bit Madonna-ish
That's the way.
right then. Because quite often it can lean, when you have a blue flower, they can lean towards purple, can't they? It's like bluebells. I don't think bluebells are actually blue. I think they're more a sort of purple.
Well,
Purpley blue.
I've done a tiny bit of research, and I'll come on to this later on in the show when we actually get to it. This is great. I'm so happy.
Are you?
I'm so happy I bothered.
Oh, all right, okay.
Because things might... I mean, it's not... Don't get too excited. It's not. I'm not going to go all David Attenborough here.
No.
But I've done enough to maybe shed some light on the reason why that statement you've just made is
It'll be
correct.
because animals don't see... Like bees and insects and things, it's something to do with them, isn't it? The way that they see things.
I couldn't possibly comment on that bit.
Oh, right, okay.
You could well be right.
I think it's something to do with pollinators.
Right.
And what they're attracted to, maybe.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool.
I've no idea.
This all sounds very racy.
I'm completely making all of this up. Who knows if it's true?
Now, look. I mean, newsflash of the highest order.
Yeah.
Because Star Trek is back, baby.
Oh, yes.
Can you believe it? Just when you thought...
There was no hope.
It's all gone a bit Star
Warsy now.
And, you know, a series which was born out of a series called Star Trek Discovery.
I haven't seen that one.
No, well, it got cancelled and reports are not good at all. And Bryony and I did, because it appeared about 4 or 5 years ago.
Right.
And Bryony and I did watch a little bit of it. And...
Didn't like it?
No. But Star Trek Strange New Worlds, it's brilliant. It's so brilliantly done because it takes place before Kirk's Enterprise, the original series in the 60s. Yeah. And whilst, of course, it has to look better because we're watching it today, and if they produced something that looked like that from the 60s, as much as it was brilliant back then, people wouldn't have it, would they?
No.
Well, they still do it in a way, which it feels like constantly it's setting the scene for what's to come, whilst being new and original.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's the best bit, isn't it?
Yeah, the characters are great. You know, it's got in some characters, you know, that you will... Well,
Spock. Because all
there's Uhura's in it.
Oh, yeah, that's true. But it's like... It's like she's totally different.
She's very young, Uhura.
Yeah.
And,
So it's Spock and Uhura.
Yes, Spock and Uhura are in it. And the fella who plays Spock, right, it's Gregory Peck's grandson.
Amazing.
Come on, I mean, talk about acting royalty. When I told Bryony, of course, she was like...
No clue.
Who?
What are you talking about?
I showed her a picture of Gregory Peck. I said, oh,
He's
my
goodness.
He's not handsome. I said, this man back in the day was like... he was the bee's knees, you know, in the acting world. And she just looked at him and she went, huh?
2 words.
Gregory Peck.
2 words. The Omen.
Oh, I know, yeah. we don't talk about The Omen. It scares me just to talk about it.
I got in trouble once a few years ago because we went to my brother's son's baptism and I made a video afterwards.
It's quite a few years ago, that.
Yes, and do you recall the music I put over the top of it?
You put the music from The Omen. I mean, that's not cricket, that, is it? I don't think things are like that are funny.
No.
Dan's laughing. I don't think that's funny. So if you agree with me, I'm on your side. That is not amusing.
Bryony and I we used to love watching You've Been Framed, and they've not made a new series of it. They don't seem to have done. So we've taken to watching Fail Army on YouTube, and Kate comes in and watches it, and she'll go,
I can't watch
That's
it.
not funny.
I can't watch it. These people hurting themselves. I'm like, they can't be doing with this. This is just not funny. Why is that funny? That person just hurt themselves.
It's funny, isn't it? Because it does play into that slapstick comedy.
I suppose so, but slapstick comedy is not real, is it? You know, it's not.
These things are real
People falling and slipping on the ice and hurting themselves, you know. And I'm like, oh, their poor back. But clearly all these people are fine. They wouldn't have sent in a video, would they?
They always put up actually something saying nobody was hurt.
And nobody was hurt. And nobody was seriously hurt. I'm sure there's some bruises going on.
Now, speaking of, you know, Star Trek Strange New Worlds, amazing technology, of course.
Really good. And the man who plays Pike.
Brilliant.
Lovely.
It's great casting. And within it, there's obviously great technology because it's set in the future. And that picks up very nicely with my abject failure now, it seems, to work modern technology.
No, Dan's lost the ability to text entirely.
Because, look, I have a new date. For your diary. Because on the 28th of April, there is, of course, Ed Balls Day. Now, for those of you outside of the UK, and for those of you maybe in the UK, you won't know what this is. Well, basically what happened was a number of years ago, I think it was 2011. Yes, 2011, politician at the time, Ed Balls, decided he would go onto Twitter and to see if there was any stories about himself. He thought he was doing a search for Ed Balls. He wasn't. He tweeted his own name. Now, this has gone down in history, and people celebrate it to this day. You know, we're now 12 years on, and people still celebrate the 28th of April. Of course.
How funny.
Not only Ed Balls Day, there's Jeff Fisher Day, which is, of course, the 8th of August.
Yeah.
8 and 8.
8 and 8.
And now, till the end of time...
Classic.
Till the end of time, the 5th of May will be Lamar Jackson Day. And the reason for that is, on the 5th of May this year, somehow, I've no idea how this happened, to greet my darling wife first thing on a morning, because Kate got up early, I'd woken up later, I had been looking at some news articles, and then I thought, I'll just send Kate a quick message to say, morning, hope you're okay. And I tweeted her a picture of Lamar Jackson. Didn't tweet. I messaged.
He texted me a picture of Lamar Jackson, and I'm like,
with no message.
No message.
Just.
I was like, okay. And I actually didn't know who he was. I knew he was an American footballer.
You would have recognised him, but he had a strange hairdo at the time.
His hair was weird. Yeah. I thought, who is this man? I don't know. I thought, Dan's got some piece of news about this person or, he's going to tell me something exciting. And so I'm just texting back and I said, oh, morning, thank you for the random photo of an American footballer. And then you were like, oh,
what am I doing? I'm like, I can't believe that we've reached this point in society where I had to successfully text Kay something without even realising it. It just shows you, doesn't it? It's too easy. I agree that technology needs to be intuitive, but I'm now finding that it's so intuitive you can't work it out.
No.
Or it's so intuitive
you don't know you've done something.
Yes.
Yeah.
The issue, it seems to be with me, is I just seem to be losing the ability with my large hands to text correctly.
You get all different letters and I'll just get random messages. I'm like, right, okay, what did he want to say with this message?
Yes, it's like encrypted.
Can I interpret this message?
It's encryption. Disastrous.
Yeah.
But look, that's enough preambulation.
Preambulation?
Yeah.
Is that a word?
Well, it is a word, but...
It makes me think of perambulator, because that's what a pram is, isn't it?
Oh, I think I should have said perambulation.
Perambulation.
Not preambulation. Yeah. Look, we'll save this. We'll save this for the dictionary podcast.
Yes.
How boring that would be.
Oh, no, I'd love that.
Well, no, actually thinking about it.
I think that'd be really interesting.
Well, it would be. Because
I think the history of words and things is fascinating.
That's etymology, isn't it?
Etymology, yeah, not entomology, as I get it confused, because that's butterflies.
I thought I'd said it wrong.
It's entomology. I think that's butterflies, and etymology is words.
It's definitely etymology words.
I think it's butterflies, or is it insects? I don't know. I don't know anything.
That's enough waffle. Yes. I'll just stick to what I usually say. Because we've got way too many lovely things to show you, and I have lots of mistakes to own up to.
Oh.
So without further ado, I think I should say, Kay Jones, what's on your knees?
Thankfully, I don't have any mistakes to own up to this time.
You don't often make mistakes.
I don't often make mistakes, no. I don't think I do.
Not with your knitting.
Not with knitting, no. In life, constantly. But no, not with knitting so much.
Although I successfully spilt some lime juice all over my desk
Guess what he did the other day, right? He walked over to his desk. I'm pointing because it's over there. He got a big cup of
lime juice.
It was just lime cordial with water, luckily.
Thank goodness it wasn't anything more.
Wasn't anything dark.
Or something hot.
Yeah. And he put it on his desk and then somehow...
Knocked it over.
And it
was
just...
completely full.
Completely full, and it was a big cup. It went over the desk, over everything on his desk, onto the floor.
But amazingly, calculator wouldn't work. Let it dry out, works fine.
Works now.
Just a bit sticky. Although you don't really need them anymore. I did think that. Because
I still use my calculator.
Well, I do.
Because
I use the calculator all the time.
I'm pointing down there now because my in basket is down there, so I keep my calculator. I've got a calculator because I know there's one on your phone, but the one on my phone I find annoying.
Well, I'd just rather use a calculator.
I like buttons to press.
Yeah.
It feels secure.
If you're doing a lot of calculations, it's much easier using buttons.
And I've actually got, and I love it, when I do accounts every year, I have to add up a lot of things, with invoices and stuff and things I bought. I've got one of those, what are they called? It's like a calculator, but it prints off.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it. I feel like I'm sort of in like an old-fashioned shop or something.
Yeah.
You press the plus and it ticker tapes through. Love it. Could do that all day. What I've got to show you first of all is a new addiction, everyone. I've got a new addiction. You'll be glad to know. And it's in this lovely bag. I really needed a big bag for this project. So I pulled out this one. It's a Harry Potter bag that my friend Sasha made me a good few years ago. She doesn't make bags to sell, but what she did do a good few years ago when we had, was it when I did my Swish and Flick collective?
Yeah, I think so.
It could have been. She just made a load of these Harry Potter bags and donated them to the podcast, and a load of people won them, which was so kind of her. She's so lovely. And this one I kept for myself, so it's the lovely big Harry Potter bag. And in this lovely big Harry Potter bag is a brand new project. So this came about, I need to tell you the little backstory to this. I was reading one evening and my back was against the wall. And my back was cold and I'm thinking, my back's a bit chilly. And I said to Bryony, I could do something around my back. And then I was like, I need a shawl. I need a reading shawl.
Amazing.
For when I'm sat reading of an evening. And even like when it's warm in the summer, if my back's against the wall, it's cold because, walls are cold, aren't they? So I sit on the floor to read. And I was like, this is a revelation. So I was reading with Bryony one evening, and I said, oh my goodness, I said, Bryony, I need a reading shawl. And she went, oh, I need one too. Because she reads in the morning first thing when she wakes up, and she's like, I need one too. I said, right, okay, well, I'll just make one initially and we can share it, because you don't need it when I need it, and I don't need it when she needs it. Oh, did I say that all right?
So winner.
So we can just share it, and then ultimately I think I will probably make another one because I'm completely addicted. So, of course, I couldn't think about anything else that evening because I was just consumed by thoughts of this reading shawl and how I was going to make it and what yarn I was going to use and what I was going to do, and I was totally consumed. So the next morning I woke up and started thinking about it again, and I thought, yes, I know what I'm going to do. I've got a set of Advent minis that was last Advent, just gone. So I thought, right, I'm going to use those in some way to make a reading shawl. Now, because I wanted this really big, I want it really big. And at this point, I've no idea how big it's actually going to be. But because I wanted it really big, I thought, right, I've got the minis and I'm going to have a coordinating yarn as well. So I've dyed up some yarn for that. So I thought, right, okay, I'm going to hold it double because I want this to be really nice and cosy and snuggly. So I'm going to hold the yarns double. And I thought, do you know what? I'm going to do something different. And I'm going to hold the Advent minis double. And then I'll hold the coordinating colour double as well. Now, when I say the Advent minis double, I mean 220 grams together. So I'm going to choose 220 grams that I think will go together and hold them double. And I'm knitting a shawl. I've just improvised the pattern because what I wanted with it, I wanted a solid shawl. I didn't want any eyelets. I wanted it just to be solid, garter stitch, because again, that's squishy and lovely and cosy. So no yarn overs for the increases. So then I thought about what increase I wanted to use, and I just wanted to use the most straightforward increase that I could. So I'm only using knit front backs. So it's literally knitting and knit front backs, and that's it. And it's an absolute joy. So I'll show you where I'm up to, and then I'll explain how I'm working the colours and what yarn I'm using.
Oh, it's lovely.
So I started obviously up here with this sort of reddish, pinkish section.
Oh, that's lovely yarn, that.
It moves into a kind of brownish and then orange, and then I've just started this gold, or I'm halfway through actually, this gold section. And it's interspersed with this beautiful colour. Now I dyed this, and I'll hold it, I've got several skeins of this because, right, I dyed up 4 50-gram skeins, and I thought that hopefully that'd be enough, 200 grams. But then when I got going with it, I'm like, I don't even know if this is going to be enough, judging by how much I was using. So then I panicked and dyed up another 4. Now, I don't even know if I'm going to need those other 4. But this is the colour that I dyed up. It's got a very blush coloured pink, and then there's a wash of gold over the top, and it's just so pretty. And this is it skeined up, so it's just this gorgeous blush colour, so pretty. I didn't give it a name. So what I'm doing is, each of these coloured sections, it's 2 20-gram minis held together, and I'm using it until it runs out. Yeah, what I'm doing is I'm holding 2 20-gram minis together. So I'm choosing 2 minis and holding them together. But my aim when I'm holding them together is actually to make it look like it's just one yarn. And I think so far, I've sort of succeeded. When you actually look close, like this section here is just maybe reading as brown, but if I hold it close, can you see all the colours that are in it? It's really pretty, and whoops-a-daisy.
That's quite musical.
That was my cup.
I think that was a G.
And then it goes into this orange, which is again an orange and a pink held together. And then we've got this gold, which the gold is these two held together, which is a gold and then a sort of beigey colour. So in terms of how I'm choosing the colours, I thought I will go with a sort of rainbow, but not a rainbow. This doesn't look anything like a rainbow. But I thought in terms of me picking colours out and deciding which one's coming next, I thought if I stick to the progression of a rainbow, then I know it's going to look good, because I think any colour progression that's based on a rainbow always looks good, doesn't it? So the yarn that I'm using as the my Advent set that I had was from Pixie Yarns, and I've got the rest of them are in this glamorous bag. So the colours that's coming next after the gold, I think will be these two, because from yellow you move into green, and this one, although it's yellow, it's got very greenish undertones. And then this speckle does have a lot of green in it as well. So I think I'll be holding those two double for the next one. And then after that we move into the greens. So in here there are a couple of greens, like these two are very pretty. And then there's quite a lot of blues and purples, so they will, as we move through, there'll be blues and purples coming into it. There's a very bright blue, which I think I might actually pair with that one, because that'll be a very bright section, won't it? But fun. You can see I'm having great fun with this, and I've no idea how big it will be. It's quite big now, and I'm only on colour 4, but of course as the stitch count gets more, you will increase less with each yarn, if you know what I mean, because you're not getting as many rows out of each mini. So, for the first section I got all of this, and then it rapidly decreases to a much smaller section. But what I'm actually going to do, my coordinating colour here, I'm actually going to decrease the thickness of the stripes with that as we run through. So the first 3 here have been 5 garter ridges, and then the next 3 will be less, the next 3 will be less, etc. So that will then allow me to use more of the minis. So as the amount of yarn I've used for the minis decreases and the stripes get thinner, so will the coordinating stripes get thinner as well. So I think that progression as it moves through will look really pretty. And I can't wait, I've done all of this fairly quickly. And like I say, it is quite big already. I can't remember how many stitches I've got on. I am keeping a note of all of my stitch counts as I move through, so that if I want to knit another one, then I've got everything written down. I'm using 4.5mm needles, because I really like that with yarn held double. It's what I'm using for my favourite blanket. And I started knitting this with a different pair of needles, and they're lovely. I'll show them to you. It's these ones. It's the Knit Pro Mindful, and I started using these, and they're lovely. They're really, really lovely needles, and the cable is fantastic. The cable is like a Chowgu cable, but blue. And I would have happily carried on using these, but the problem for me is when I knit, and I think Dan's the same, I push with the end of my finger, and they are quite sharp. So I decided to order another set of higher bamboos, so that's what I'm using. And at the moment it's on a 100cm cable, and I've also got the next size up, because it definitely is going to need the next size up cable, which is, and look, they come in a pink packet now, which is rather lovely. So I've got 120cm as well, and I'm hoping that'll be big enough for the finished shawl, but we'll see.
Cool.
So I'm all prepared with my needles, and I'm just loving it. It's just so fun. Just having those, and the increases just look really pretty. They form like a sort of little band down here, which is really pretty, and then a band along the top, which is also really nice. It took a bit of figuring out to get this side looking the same as this side, because you're using knit from backs, it affects the stitches, and it looks lovely. And I'm just crazy mad on it, so I will show you that again next time, because it's all I want to work on right now. And I'm loving it. So yes, a shawl. When's the last time I knit a shawl? Can't even remember. So of course I'll be reading loads as well when I finish this, just so that I can use it. Dan Jones, what's on your needles?
So it's the time before last, I showed you the Hadrian's Cowl, and it was a bit of a disaster because I'd messed it up.
He did.
We realised it mid sort of showing, but I sort of cleverly edited it so that it didn't look as bad as it actually was. Because there's a brick section in the Hadrian's Cowl to signify the wall, which of course is quite important. And the first repeat, the pattern clearly states that the bricks are 3 stitches wide and 2 stitches tall. But for some reason, wasn't it for some reason at all, I just didn't look at the pattern. I'm like a walking advert for stupidity. It's a clever thing because just when you think you know what you're doing, or certainly for me, when you think you know what you're doing, it teaches you a lesson.
You got a bit cocky.
Well, it's not that I got cocky. I just thought, we're onto the brick bit again, and I'll just go for it. I mean, why? Oh.
I think you're just thinking you've done it before. I know what I'm doing.
We ripped it out.
We?
There was, yes.
The royal we, I think that is.
I think we stood and. Okay, you might have physically ripped out But we together. You sorted out
the yarn because it was all twisted.
Yes. So together we rectified the situation and I started again.
Yes.
Now, what's been nice about this situation is it's enabled me to sort of focus in on certain areas. Well, it's one area because that's all I've knitted so far. But here, this is the first brick section. It's tricky because it's a repetitive, the same. Over and over again. 2x... No,
you did it again.
3x3. Do you see? It's just sort of stuck in my head. It's Noah's fault.
It's Noah's fault. His animals should have gone in 3x3, shouldn't they? They
should have got more in. Puckering was an issue here. And so up here, what I've tried to do is I've tried to get rid of the puckering. And it's definitely better than down there. And it's only as I've got through it that I've been able to sort of focus in on. And to me, what it seems that rectifies the problem down here is by being random with your floats.
Yeah, I'd say.
Rather than being religious with your floats. Mm-hmm. And so what I'm doing is one round I'm carrying my float on the 3rd stitch, and on the second round I'm carrying my float on the 2nd stitch.
Right.
And I started that approach after about 2.5
repeats.
Yes, because I forgot that it was a problem, and then I saw that I was getting the puckering issue, and so but I'm literally on the final repeat now, and I'm playing the best game ever.
Are you?
I kid you not, I'm loving this because this isn't Yarn Chicken in the same way that you all play Yarn Chicken.
No.
Because the situation is this. When I knitted this section before, 2x2, finished the section, carried on through the next section, began the section after that, all of which had to be ripped out. I cut this yarn because I'd finished with it, because there's a section of plain knitting. So this length of yarn was fine for knitting this section when I did it 2x2. But I don't know why, I'm fascinated to see how much yarn I have left.
I was just trying to figure out whether you'd use more. You're going to use more, aren't you, than 2x2, are you?
Well,
or not? I don't know.
I'm a little way into the final row. I think I'm going to get round.
Right, okay. Yeah, I mean, that'd be so weird, wouldn't it? If
What's going to be weird?
Exactly the same amount of yarn.
What's going to be weird is if I get round and it finishes and there's a nice tail for weaving in ends too.
I suppose what we need to work out is how many stitches of that colour are on each round when it's 2x2 and when it's 3x3.
I think we're getting a bit too far into it.
I don't know whether it'd be the same.
That's a bit too much maths for my liking.
Yeah, I could work it out.
So, sincere apologies for showing you the same thing again. Isn't it lovely, though?
It's very lovely.
It is extremely lovely.
It's very lovely.
And I'm enjoying knitting this more this time than I was last time.
It's very beautiful.
It is. It's tremendous.
Yeah.
And so, by the time you see it next time, I should be back to where I was before I made that idiotic mistake.
And this winter, I'll be wearing my cowl.
It'll be all woozy.
Yeah, it will be woozy.
Nice. Yeah. Beautiful. So that's my Hadrian's Cowl, and it's knitted with the gorgeous merino yak.
Regia Merino, yeah.
Yes.
And you're using a 3.25 maybe?
Yeah.
3.25mm, I think.
And I shall continue with said knitting because I'm enjoying it too much.
Oh, cool.
What else
Well, I
is on
show
your
you
needles?
something else. So the next thing is another new thing, actually, and it's in my lovely seaside bag. Oh, from Emma at Moo and Mouse. And I think Emma is having a patchwork update on the day this video goes out. On Friday. It's Friday. Is it this Friday or next Friday? Do you know what?
Look, this is getting way too confusing.
Go to Emma's Instagram. She's Moo and Mouse, and have a look if you're interested, and it tells you when her update is. And she's got, I think, a couple of bags exactly like this, or one at least like this. Love it. So in this lovely bag is a pair of fingerless mitts. Now, these mitts are going to be a gift for someone, and I'm using yarn that I dyed myself in these two lovely colours. It's Pinkalicious. We've got this lovely soft pink and then a gorgeous speckled. So I'm using these two yarns together, and when I say together, not held together, I'm striping them, you'll see in a second. And I'm just knitting a plain fingerless mitt because I think these would be useful for this person. I'm not going to say what for, but just in case she's watching, she might guess it's her if I say what I think the purpose would be good for. But I'm using the template I've got several fingerless mitt patterns actually out there, but I'm using the one for the dynamite mitts. I've just shortened it. So I've done one mitt apart from the thumb, so I'll pop that on so you can see without thinking I'll stretch it out too much, because I don't like doing that when
What's the speckled yarn?
I just dyed it.
Oh, it's lovely.
And it actually...
They're both lovely.
Yeah, I mean, they look lovely. It looks lovely striped. I've got loads of ends. I'll sort those out, obviously, when it's finished. But look how pretty that is. I just love the way that it's sort of blendy because of the speckles, because they merge into the sort of tonal colour. Really lovely. So just cute little mitts, and I've just got the thumb to do here. So I figured it out so that it would start and end with the tonal here and here, and also the thumb would end on the tonal, so that it all looked really nice and sort of symmetrical and even. It's like doing cuffs, heels and toes in the same yarn, isn't it? Except these are cuffs. Cuffs and cuffs are all in the same yarn. But isn't it pretty? So I've got the other one on the needles, and I'm up to here. So I'm doing 8 rows per stripe. So I've got a pale pink stripe to go here, and then I'll start the thumb gusset increases. And I'm using some needles actually I've not used for some time. I'm using the Chowgoo mini twists. Do you know I used to use these all the time, didn't I, for knitting socks? It's the ones with the super thin cables, and I love them. You know, they're fabulous. But for me, for socks, it doesn't matter for mitts actually, which is good. And this is not too bad. So maybe I will use them for socks again. But because the cable is so thin, I was finding, because when you work Magic Loop, you swap over your cables, don't you, halfway? You could swap over front to back halfway. I was getting a tight stitch down the point where I'm swapping over, because what happens is that last stitch on your back needle, as you sort of pull out your back needle to work on your front stitches, that last stitch I find tightens up, as you pull your yarn over. And I've tried to be a bit more deliberate this time, and I think it's better. This hasn't been blocked, and I don't think it's too bad actually. I'm not even sure if you can see it or not. The reason I'm using them for this is because I thought, well, you don't ever really turn mitts on their side like you do with socks. You don't ever do that. It's always just on the side of your hand, so I thought I can get away with it. And I'm loving using the needles for them. I'm using 2.5mm, and it produces a lovely gauge for mitts, I find. It's not too dense and not too gappy, just perfect. I get about 8.5 stitches, I think, to the inch on 2.5mm. So yeah, these lovely mitts will be finished for next time, because they've got to be finished for next time, but they don't take very long at all. I'm using my knit a few rows a day method. I'm doing a little chunk every day and planning it out, And generally I've been doing a pattern, 8 rounds. So I'll do the cuff, which is 16 rounds. And then after that, I'll do 8, 8, 8, 8, 8, 8 until I've finished them. And I've got a good week or so, really, to get these done. So I'll be able to just work, because eight rounds doesn't take that long. And I can easily sort of work that into my schedule of knitting, which is quite heavy at the moment, but I can still work that in and it's not a problem. But really sweet little projects, and they're a great quick little knit, for gifts, Christmas gifts, and it uses barely any yarn. So you can use leftovers for it as well. If you've knit some socks, you can use leftovers. So loving those little mitts.
They're very nice, and I particularly like the yarn. And I was just sat here thinking, not that I would ever be good enough, although, anyone would be if you sort of... I think anything that you immerse yourself in, you're guaranteed to get better at, so long as you immerse yourself in it and you try.
Yeah.
But I'm not very good with colours, so I'd never be any good at this, because what I was going to say was how unbelievably superb it is to have, as a knitter... What we should all have as knitters is someone within our house who can dye yarn. So long as you've got that,
you should.
You're always going to be all right.
Or a friend, or someone.
Yeah, a friend who's prepared to dye yarn for you.
I suppose.
Or sell you the yarn that they've dyed.
Yeah, I suppose if it was someone in your house, then...
The key to success is having someone in your house like I do, where if we don't have the perfect yarn... Kay will just go, oh, well, I'll just dye it.
Yeah.
And then you have it, because I bet you so many of you have had, for example, the next thing I'm showing you, without the perfect yarn, this would be an utter pain to knit and a disaster. But because this yarn is Jameson Smith, what weight?
Jumper weight.
2-ply
jumper weight.
Jameson Smith, 2-ply jumper weight. And it's perfect. I can't begin to tell you how perfect it is. It's beyond perfect. This is like, I couldn't want for better yarn to knit a fingering weight.
It's beautiful.
Am I right calling it fingering weight?
It is, it is fingering weight, but the company actually call it 4-ply because, in this country, it's a UK, Shetland Islands, isn't it? It's a UK company, so... we refer to that weight of yarn as 4-ply generally.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm so lost.
I think 4-ply is actually a little bit heavier than a fingering weight, personally.
Although this feels, that feels light to me. But no, it isn't, is it?
It does feel light, but I think the thing is it will bloom, won't it? And it will fill the spaces. Yeah.
So one repeat is to here. So this is the next repeat. So it's taken me a couple of weeks to knit that. But there are 300 and odd stitches on the needle.
And you're not knitting it all the time. So
no, it takes me 2 weeks of knitting it all the time to knit that section.
Right. You knit like a couple of things, alternating them, don't you?
No, I have other projects on the go.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's not all your knitting time.
No.
But yeah.
So it takes me 2 weeks to knit that section there, and I'm not as disappointed with that as I thought I would be. And you found out when you bought this yarn.
I bought it
December.
it was November,
right.
I believe.
And I cast it on in December.
I don't know when you cast it on.
I think I did.
Right.
Yeah.
But I bought it in November. I bought it from Fine Fettle Yarns.
I couldn't recommend this more if you're thinking of, because it's the first time I've ever knitted a fingering weight, jumper weight, garment. If you're looking for the perfect yarn, whether you were knitting it, a plain jumper with maybe some patterning in it, or whether you're doing colour work, it's beyond gorgeous and
beautiful.
Just so sort of rewarding to knit with. The only thing I wish I'd done a bit more
rib. Yeah.
But I did what the pattern said.
You did, yeah. I suppose it depends on your gauge, doesn't it, as to how long that would be. But
it was in length. It wasn't in rounds.
Oh right, okay. It's not flipping or anything.
No, it sounds funny.
Once it's blocked as well, I think it's fine.
Do you say flipping in your part of the world?
Flipping.
Flipping heck.
Flipping heck. That's not a swear word, by the way.
I got stuck in flipping traffic on the way home.
Yeah, it's not a swear word. Don't worry.
No.
Yeah, I wonder if it's a Yorkshire thing.
It is a Yorkshire thing.
Is it a Yorkshire thing?
Yeah.
It means, oh, no. Yeah.
I had to go down to flipping shops for milk this morning.
Yeah.
Because we'd run out.
Yeah. You have to be careful saying it, but yeah.
Do you? Oh, it could become something else?
Yes.
Oh, no.
No.
So, yes. And is that what you're looking for with a rib, that it doesn't flip?
Yeah, sometimes if you only knit a small amount of ribbing, it can flip up like that, can't it?
Right.
Because your ribbing is there really to hold your garment and to keep everything flat.
Yeah.
So, but, you know, the fact that it's, you know, I'm just holding it like that and it's not flipping upwards. So once it's blocked, I think it's fine.
Yeah.
You know, it is a funny word. It is a funny word, isn't it?
It's just because it's Yorkshire, and Kay does come out with some Yorkshireisms sometimes.
I do sometimes.
Which is quite funny. My favourite bit to do, funnily enough, the 1x1 stuff with this yarn. So this sort of, they're like crenellations. There's quite a bit of 1x1 work in different parts of the pattern, and it's just tremendous. The hardest round for me so far is this round here, which splits this sort of lovely pink, looks sort of like a biscuit. It splits it in half because it's 2 brand new colours that come in. So you leave your other ones on hold, you bring in the other 2 new ones, and that was quite challenging for me because there's like a lot of yarn going on.
We've not said what this is, I don't believe.
It's the Roosty Tank Top.
By Ella Gordon.
Yeah. So really, really enjoying knitting it, highly recommend it, and looking forward to steeking.
You might be.
Yeah, well, we steeked before.
We did.
And it was terrifying.
I'm not looking forward to it one bit.
No, me neither. But the difference is this time we're using yarn that is good for it.
Yes.
Last time we were using yarn.
Last time we didn't, but I will still be reinforcing the steeks, though, I've got to say. I'm belt and braces.
And thankfully the steeks are substantially smaller.
They are.
Because it's just for the 2 arms.
It was a cardigan last time, so it was like a huge... It's for the neck and the arms, isn't it?
Yes.
We'll do it, I'm sure.
What else is on your needles?
So the final thing I've got to show you is in my lovely bag that I showed you last time, my cross-stitch bag. This is from the Summer of Stitching, which we are now in.
The summer stitching is well underway.
Yes.
Starting with the beachcomber socks.
Yes, we're working our way through the beachcomber socks at the moment, and loads of people have cast on, and we've seen all beautiful types of beachy yarns. There's a few people using self-striping, which looks great.
So that pattern...
Lots of blues, lots of golds, lots of sandy colours.
That pattern, it's available exclusively as part of the course, and it's out now. So you can download it now.
So you can get knitting your beachcombers, and then after we've finished the beachcomber socks, we're starting work, first of all, on this cross-stitch that I designed.
We had great fun, didn't we, in getting the right software, but then getting it so that it would print and show up. Yeah. I mean, again, it's the whole...
I've got to say this. I purchased some software similar to the software that I use for charting knitting patterns. I think it kind of presumes that you know what to do with this software. It's not very intuitive as to know what all the little icons do and how you do things. So I had to actually Google it, and I found a YouTube video of a cross-stitcher who was using the software, and it showed you how to use it. So thank goodness for that. Yeah. And that really helped me. It's called Stitch Fiddle, the one that I'm using, which I know, funny word again, Stitch Fiddle. And it is free. You can use a free version, but to get the things that I needed, really, it is an extra payment. It's not very expensive.
Fiddle is one of those words, like tinkle. Which we all need to use more often.
I know.
Because someone said to me on the phone the other day that they were going to get someone to give me a tinkle. Yeah. And that is something which I used to hear when I was a kid.
Yeah,
so you would hear people say that for
it's usually
phone
like older generation.
Yeah. Funny enough, the person I was talking to wasn't old at all, but had clearly heard it, most probably from older generations within their family. But if you're going to phone someone up, say, I'll give you a tinkle.
I'll give you a tinkle. We asked Brian if she knew what it meant. She was like...
And fiddle is right up there too. Yeah. It's another sort of word. It's another cutesy word.
Yeah. But in my lovely bag, I've got Dan's socks that I started last time, and I've almost finished the first sock now. Dan's socks do take me some time because they're so huge, but again, I've been doing a little bit of these every day, and I've nearly finished the first sock. Look, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. is pop it onto a blocker. I've got a large one here. So these are the socks that I'm knitting using the Malabrigo Ultimate Sock, which I absolutely love. So I'll just orientate this the right way and then get it on a blocker. And I can show you a bit better. Oh, isn't it lovely? Yeah, the yarn is flashing a little bit, but I actually don't mind it in this sort of format. It's sort of like a stripe, isn't it? Like a swirly stripe it's doing. And in reality, you don't see that as much as you can see it on screen. But I put in this lovely stitch pattern, which is just knits and pearls. But I think it kind of looks a bit sea-like it's sort of, I don't know, some formation of something. I'm not quite sure, but it really suits the yarn, I think. It looks altogether very sea, if that's a word. And I think I'm about, I don't know, 3 or 6 rounds off the toe. Looking at that, it doesn't look as long as it normally looks when I knit down socks, so I will check the length. But I'm really enjoying knitting the yarn. It's really lovely, so I'll show you. Let's just reorientate that. So the yarn is this gorgeousness. So it's Malabrigo Ultimate Sock, and this colourway is Indicita. I wonder what that means, where that name comes from. I know it's one of their really popular colourways, isn't it? It's such a lovely shade, with those blues and greens and purples. I think it would appeal to a lot of different people who like different colours. So yeah, really, really enjoying it still, which is good for dance socks. I'm knitting these on 2.5mm is what I usually do for dance socks, and 72 stitches. I find that works best. I see people knitting socks for like their husbands and male friends and things, and they'll use like 64 stitches and 2.25mm, and I'm like, gosh, they must have really little ankles and really little feet, those men, because I just can't imagine. I know people come in all different shapes and sizes. Yes. Obviously. But it's like a dream. It's sort of like a bit of a dream for me to be able to knit man-sized socks using a stitch count that I would knit for, me or Bryony. I just, I find that like I said, a bit dreamlike, I wish sort of situation.
The problem is if I had smaller feet, I'd be smaller in stature, and I don't think...
that is true.
I don't think you would like that.
Dan's nearly 6'5", in case you can't tell. I mean, he's sat down, obviously, so I don't know why you would be able to tell. But I think it's funny, actually, when you see people in real life...
In shoes, I am 6'5".
In shoes, you're above 6'5".
I am, yes.
I would say in those shoes you wear for the...
Well above.
For the monasteries thing, you would be touching 6'6", I think.
Well, in my running shoes, I'm definitely 6'6".
Yeah.
Quite often I'll be out running and people will see me coming and there's sort of like a...
Wow, he's tall. And, Dan is really tall, and he's right, that is why he's got such huge feet, because he's tall. Saying that, though, Bryony, our daughter, is tall. She's 5'10". She's got size 6 UK feet.
Come on.
And her feet haven't grown since she was about 12 or 13. She's had size 6 feet, which is the same as me. I'm as a UK size 6, which is a European 39. And I actually measured them the other day because I was knitting some socks for her. And I said, I've not measured your foot in ages. And I know the length of it, with a tape measure to measure it, exactly the same. And, she's not complained about her shoes not fitting or anything. So I don't think her feet are actually going to get any bigger. She's not got any taller for a year or maybe even 2. She's not really got any taller, has she?
No.
So it doesn't always go. It really surprised me that she got such small feet for her height.
Yeah, I think if she was 6'5", she'd probably have bigger feet.
I think if she was 6'5", as a woman, that would be like...
They'd be getting her ready for international basketball games.
They would, wouldn't they? She could just go pop it in then.
Although, do you know what? I had a friend who loved playing basketball and I couldn't stand it.
You didn't like it?
I played once. I just thought, this is rubbish.
You'd have been good, wouldn't you?
Yeah, that's what he said. So I went along. I think it was...
just because you're tall doesn't mean you'd enjoy something for tall people.
For me, it was more... If it would be if someone had said to me when I was that age, come play American football, I'd have been there in a a heartbeat.
Yeah, and you'd be a tight end, would you?
I would have liked to have been.
Yeah,
But
if you had
to be
ever
honest,
played.
when I was 14, 15, I'd have probably been put at wide receiver.
Yeah.
Because I was really thin and I was fast.
Yeah, you look like a wide receiver.
Yeah.
Your physique, I would say, is a wide receiver. Yeah.
Well, he suggested that we play basketball in the lunchtime. And I went once and I thought I'd much rather go and sit and enjoy my lunch than do this.
And it's funny because
I didn't go again.
We used to play netball at school, and it was hideous. I loathed
It's
netball.
an idiotic game.
Because you can't move once you've got the ball.
It's stupid.
With netball, once you've got the ball, you can spin around with one foot, but you can't actually move. It's not like basketball.
Why don't you just play basketball?
You can't run with the ball. I'm like, why can't you run? Why is this? Why does
that's the game.
Why netball can you not move? Oh, I absolutely loathed it.
My favourite game at school was hockey.
We played hockey as well, and I didn't like that either because I always got put in goal because I was larger, let's say, back then. So they always stuck me in the goal. So I hated that as well. I've not got very good memories of PE at school, I'll be honest, because the whole wearing the short skirt thing and being
I didn't
on
like that either.
the larger size, mortifying. Hated it. Anyway, back to the sock.
I think you've finished with the sock.
So I have finished, haven't I? So I'm nearly at the toe of the first one. I'll get this finished, cast on the next.
Right.
Carry on.
It's time for some more fancy business. Yes.
Yes.
Last time, Kay finished her increases and hit the first section of the midsection, and it was marvellous.
Wow.
I know. So today, what will the inspiration be as we continue on the
what
gorgeousness? What flower will it be? Let's find out in the next My Favourite Blanket.
I adore creating and knitting blankets, so I decided to design a new one just for us. In this series, I'm going to show you how to make your own, from the yarn to the stitches. Join me as we knit through the seasons to create my favourite blanket. Welcome everybody to a new episode of My Favourite Blanket, and welcome to a very wet woodland today. My hood keeps falling down. So yeah, it's very, very wet, which is lovely. It's cool and wet and it's like May. Don't say anything, anybody. We're very much enjoying it. I give in with my hood. I think my head's not big enough for my hood. Okay, is that any better? So yes, I'm here in this wet woodland today to tell you about the next flower for my favourite blanket and the colours that we're going to dye up today. And this flower is one of my all-time favourites, and I've mentioned before that the colour of this flower is my favourite in sort of nature because you don't see it very often. So the colour is blue, and the flower is a Himalayan blue poppy. I absolutely love this flower. Now, it's very tricky to grow. It's a native of Tibet, as the name suggests. It comes from the Himalayas, and it's Tibet in particular, and the summers in Tibet are cool and moist. So that's the conditions that it tends to thrive in. And it can be grown in this country, but it's more successful in the sort of north of the country, and particularly more slightly shaded wooded areas. If it dries out, I think it's sort of the end of it from what I've read. I've never grown it, but it will be tried in my future fantasy garden at some point. I'm definitely going to give it a go. It was officially named for sort of Western science in 1912. So it's been around for some time and is absolutely beautiful. I don't know if any of you have got this in your gardens or you've successfully grown it, but if you have, gosh, I mean, you'll know how fantastic it is. It's very short-lived as well. I think poppies generally are short-lived, aren't they? But this one in particular is very short-lived if you can get it to flower at all. I think it's quite tricky as well to propagate. So yeah, the colours that we are going to be dyeing today are that gorgeous blue, and the centre of the flower is sort of like an orangey colour. So we're going to speckle with blues and an orange, and then the complementary colour is going to be the green leaf colour, which is a sort of bright, very bright, fresh green that we're going to be dyeing up. So really excited to get going with this one. I can't wait to get knitting all of those lovely blue speckles. So the first thing we need to do, of course, is to get out of this rain in the kitchen and dye up that lovely yarn. Okay, so what we're going to need to dye up our beautiful Himalayan poppy yarn. Oh, very excited about this one. So first of all, obviously we're going to need the yarn. This is the same as it has been the whole way through this series. So I've got 4 50-gram skeins of fingering weight yarn. Each of the 50 grams is 200 meters, and I'll be dyeing up 2 of those 50-gram skeins in each of the 2 colourways. I'm going to be using 4 skeins of 50 grams, and they are soaking away in some warm water and a tablespoon or so of citric acid. I've then got my citric acid, which is the mordant, and the mordant is the substance that means that the dye will permanently stick to the yarn. So I use citric acid. I've got my pans. So I've got 2 pans, because I'm doing 2 colourways, and these are the pans that I always use. They're stainless steel, it's like a casserole pot. Everything that you use for your dyeing, only use it for dyeing yarn. So just keep it all separate, packed away somewhere, and only use it for dyeing yarn, because dye powders are toxic, so you don't want to be doing anything else with all of these items apart from dyeing yarn. Okay, we've then got some tea towels and an old piece of oilcloth just to protect our work surfaces, because I'm just dyeing in the kitchen and likely you will be too. I've got my gloves, thin pair and a thicker pair, my trusty mixing spoon, a mask of course, my dye book with the recipes, and we are going to be speckling and doing a tonal today. So I've got paintbrushes for the speckling and then my measuring spoon for the tonal, and this is 1/8 of a teaspoon. And then finally the dyes. So today we've got 5 colours, and they're a mixture of landscape dyes and jacquard. Now, as always, I'll tell you the type of colour it is, so that if you can't get that brand, you should be able to swap it out with something similar in whatever brand is available locally to you. So first of all, I've got jacquard, and that is Aztec Gold, that's number 633. And this one is kind of like an orangey yellow. We've then got landscape dyes, and this is Splash. This is like a sort of bright light blue. Sort of like, if I was going to choose another colour, maybe like sky blue from jacquard might be a good alternative, but that's Splash from landscape. And then another landscape dye in marine. Marine is a much deeper, more intense blue. So again, if I was swapping it out, I might go for brilliant blue with jacquard, but I'm going to be using marine from landscape. And then we've got 2 shades of green. I've got another landscape dyes, and this one is Alfalfa. This one is like a sort of mossy, sagey green. And then I'm using this is the final colour. This is jacquard, and it's 629 Emerald. Now, I've mentioned before that I don't like this colour, this particular green from Jacquard, this emerald, and that is actually true. However, I'm going to be using it in a small quantity with the alfalfa, and I find that it sort of brightens and lifts the colour, which is what I want this time, because the flower is a very intense blue and then the leaves are a really sort of zingy green. So what I'm doing this time actually is I've kind of switched it, so the flower colour is going to be the speckles and the tonal is going to be the green leaf colour. So I wanted it to be nice, light and bright to sort of stand out against those blue speckles. Okay, so we're all set. We've got everything we need. So it's time to get over to the stove and start dyeing up our speckled yarn. Okay, so I've got water heating up here in my pot. I haven't got very much water at all in my pot because I'm speckling, so we don't want a lot of water. There's probably about 1.5 inches maybe in the bottom, not too much at all. And I've got another scoop of citric acid in there, which is about a tablespoon. So that's now nice and steamy, so it's heating up. So I'm going to pop in 2 of my skeins. So I've got 2 times 50 grams here. So it's had a nice soak in that citric acid already, so the fibres will be nice and soaked through, but we've also got citric acid in the water. So give them a little shake just to separate off the fibres so they don't bunch together when you put them in. And then drop them in. And just what I've tried to do is have one skein over here on the right and the other over here, sort of on the left. So let's carry on smooshing that down, and as I'm dropping it in, I'm just making sure that we've got as much yarn on the surface of the water as possible, you know, that I've exposed as much as I can, and just they then sit just there on the edge. And what you want, this is perfect, is most of the yarn is sitting above the water with just a few tiny little pools here and there, and that's absolutely fine. Because we don't mind if some of the dye goes a little bit more blendy, but on the whole we want it to sit on top. So I'm just going to crank up the heat. That's already quite hot actually, and you just want it to start to simmer, and when that happens, which is actually around about now, when you start to see movement in the water, you can turn the temperature down just to maintain it, because we don't want a rolling boil at all. Actually, I don't like boiling the yarn at all, but especially not when we're speckling, because it can disturb the speckles. So I'm actually going to turn off my heat because it is bubbling quite a bit and I don't want that to cause a problem with the speckles. So I'm turning it off for the moment and I'll pop it back on in a little bit. So the first colour that I'm going to drop in there is the marine. So the Landscapes Marine. So this one is quite a vivid, deep, sort of brilliant blue. And I could have used Jacquard Brilliant Blue, but I just prefer the formula of landscape dyes. I just find it better for speckling because it's very granular. So we're following the same technique as we've been doing all the way through to maintain that look the whole way through the blanket. So look, a bit's already dropped on, but that's fine. So just find an area and speckle on some, move across, and a bit more. And I don't do this in any kind of laid down method. I just do what feels natural to me. So just sort of random areas, but cover the whole of the surface, if that makes sense. And then by the time you've got round and done sort of as many as you want to do, you can then judge whether you think it's intense enough. And I'm going to put a bit more over there, I think. Because this flower is such an intense blue, we do want these speckles to shine through. Just maybe a little bit more there. I think that looks good. Okay. So now we can move to the next blue, which is Splash, and this one's more more sort of leaning turquoisey, I would say. You can see the difference in the pots. This one is a much darker blue. This one is much more turquoisey. And just go over the areas that we've been already. And what I tend to do is I put some sort of around the edge, so it gets its own little area. And then some also over where we've been already, because that will intensify the blue that's already there. So over here, and a bit there, and then a bit over where we've been already. And inevitably you will get sort of differences. Some areas will be more intense than others, and that just adds to how beautiful it will look when it's knit up. And then over here, last one. This blue is really pretty actually. I think that looks good. Okay. And then I'm just going to turn my heat back on, just to its lowest setting. And then the final colour is the Aztec Gold. So if you look at the flower, it's the centre sort of stameny things are like this orangey colour, orangey yellowy colour. And this colour I found works really well. Now this is a jacquard, so it's a powder. So I always treat this a little bit more gently. So we're going to find some areas that don't have the blue and just pop on a bit of orange. Orangey, yellowy. I would say it is more of an orange than a yellow, I think. Yeah, I always think of gold as a yellow, but I'm not sure. Is gold, would you say it's yellow? I think it probably is, but anyway. Just find some areas. Because this is just an accent, because it is just that centre part of the flower. So we don't want to go nuts with it. The main focus here is the blue. We just want to have those little specks of orange now and again when we're knitting with it, and that's just lovely. So now we need to let that first layer set, and it is bubbling away nicely now. So I'm just going to give it about 5 minutes or so just to let that first layer of colour set, and then I'm going to turn it and repeat. Okay, so that's had 5 minutes or so, and I've just checked it and we are good to go. But just to check that we've got a good set of colour, just take your big spoon and just give it a little prod down like that, and you'll see straight away if that was going to do anything, you know, if the dye hadn't set, it would bleed into that area here, and you can see there's nothing happening when I just push down. And it also, you can sort of grab a bit of water, drop it down, and you can see that it's clear. So we're good to go. Now, I mean, inevitably you might get a speck or two of dye that hasn't set, but don't worry about that, it's not a problem. So we're going to lift out the yarn, and as I do that you'll be able to see the difference with this side here that we haven't put dye on, and then if we flip it, ooh, loads on that side. So this is why we have to turn it and rearrange the skein, because we want to get speckles all the way through the yarn. So what I do is I just sort of move it along a little bit, and this just adds to the randomness. And then just have a look, when we've done that, just have a look about which side needs more dye. And also what we can do is actually flip the skein over, and I will do that. So now I can drop those back down, and same thing, just rearrange it as it drops in. And we want to get as much white area that's left on the skeins on the surface of the water. And you will have areas that's already got blue, and that's fine, because it's nice to have some more intense areas and it's nice to have some lighter areas. Right, that looks good to me. So now we're just going to repeat the process with probably just a little bit less dye. because that also helps with the randomness. I always think it looks really nice at this stage because we get little hints of the colour, and then we've got white as well. Right, so we can start again with the speckling layering process with the marine. And actually I'm going to turn my heat off again because that is bubbling quite a bit. And I'm speckling, and we don't want anything untoward happening. So same thing, just choose an area that you think looks like it needs some speckles. Definitely over here. And don't worry if you're going back over an area that's already got a bit of speckling on it, because that will be nice. You will get a really intense little section, and it's so nice to knit through these speckles because you never know really what you're going to get. You never know, you know, 1 second you might get really intense blue, and then the next minute you've got a paler section. It's lovely. That looks good to me. So that's the marine finished with. So move on to the splash. Same thing, just a bit less than I did before. That looks good. Yeah, I'll just put a little bit there. Yeah. And then the final colour of that Aztec gold. And I just have to do a mental adjustment because we've got that fine powder now. And just find some little areas. And it'll be fun this time to have the speckles as the blue, because you might have thought that I was going to do the tonal as the blue flower colour, because it's the tonal yarn that kind of gives the overall feeling to the colour of the yarn when you see it knitted up. However, we've not had any sort of green sort of tonally background going on, so I thought for this one it might be nice to switch it. Okay, so that's all done. I've popped the heat back on, and we just need to give that another 5 minutes or so. Bring it up to a nice simmer, then turn the heat right down, and if you want to you can cover it. Because this is speckles, it is good to sort of contain the heat on the surface to set it well. And then give it another 5-10 minutes at the most, and that should be done. So I'm letting that come to a good simmer. Turn it down. So now I'm just going to let that simmer away for 5 minutes, and then I will pop it outside to cool down. So we are ready now to do our tonal yarn. So in the pot this time it's probably just about half full, maybe not quite up to the half full mark of water. A tablespoon of citric acid in there again, and that's just heating up now nicely. And I'm going to put my dye directly into the pot. So I'm going to start with the alfalfa, and I'm going to put in a heaped 1/8 of a teaspoon into the pot. You can see as it goes in it's that kind of mossy green, but then as it breaks, it's fascinating when dyes break. Can you see the darker sort of specks of green coming out? And then the emerald, I'm just going to put in about 1/4 of a teaspoon, of the 1/8 of a teaspoon, because it's really intense. And you can see the difference. Can you see the emerald floating down? Oh, it's really pretty. It's really lovely. It's mesmerising, I think, watching it. But we're going to mix it in. So get your mixing spoon in there and give it a good old mix. And it's such a pretty colour in the pot, actually. It does look really lovely. But give it a good mix. We don't want any specks left, if possible. And look at the colour. Yeah, I mean, it looks quite intense in the pot, but it actually won't be when we put the yarn in. It's not super deep or intense, because we probably are going to add in a bit more as well. I like to, when I'm dyeing a tonal, I like to go sort of a little bit at a time, because if you dump it all in at the beginning and you put your yarn in and it's too dark, there's nothing you can do about it. So that's nice and mixed now. So we will grab 2 of the skeins, give them a squidge, shake them out a little bit. Get your big spoon at the ready and start to drop them in. Let me just check the colour. Can you see down there? It's really pretty. So drop it in, but you know, at a sort of slow-ish pace, so that we get some variations as it drops in. But you want to be dropping the top bit in before all the dye's disappeared. So you can see how lovely a green that is. You can see we've got a darker bit down here going up to really pretty colour up here. And there's still a little bit of dye in there, so I'm going to move the skein, re-drop it back in so that the lighter bits get a bit of that dye that's still in there. And I can tell this is going to need some more dye, but that's fine. That's as we want it, you know, we don't want to overdo it. And just adding in that little bit of emerald really makes it zippy. And that colour will have gone already, you can see it has, because there wasn't a lot of dye in there. It's really pretty green, isn't it? So what I will do now, I'm just going to rearrange it so that the lightest bits are at the bottom and the darker sections are where my ties are up here. Can you see that? So now I'm going to add in a bit more, because the colour that I really want, I do want this sort of green up here. And as I'm looking at it with my naked eye, I can see where I've got the more sagey green and then the emerald here as well. It does sort of separate out. It's really pretty. Okay, so what I'm going to do to ready myself for that is just take the lids off my dies. I like to keep lids on, because all I'm going to do is lift it up and drop some more dye in. So I'm going to go for about 1/2 of an eighth of alfalfa and just a little bit of emerald. Give that a good stir, and that does look about the same green as it was originally. Drop it back in, giving it a nice little wish around as you drop it in. Okay, and then I just, with your spoon, just keep moving it around, and the dye will just go in seconds. And then we can assess the colour. I mean, that looks much more as it should be. Let's have a little look. So you can see now that's a much more saturated green. I'm just assessing as to whether I think it's green enough. I mean, it's up to you. You judge it as you want to. I have swatched with this already, so I know the sort of shade I'm looking for, and there are lots of tones in there. Can you see here, this section, how this is much darker than here? So we are going to get lots of nice tones running through. Isn't that pretty? It's so nice. So that'll be really nice, and I know the blue speckles are going to stand off really nicely on it. I think that's good. Yeah. So drop it back in. I'm going to put my lids on my dies straight away, and then bring up the temperature so that it gets to that sort of simmering point, and then that will be good. We can pop it outside with the speckled to cool down. Okay, so that's our yarns all dyed up and cooling outside. So come back in part 2 when we're going to be rinsing it, we're going to be getting it dry, skeining it up and getting to the knitting. So I'll see you back soon.
What a gorgeous start. That blue. Oh my goodness.
Lovely.
Now,
Lovely.
the research I did said that blue is rare because it doesn't really exist in nature. The things that we see that are blue aren't actually blue, they're purple.
Ah.
It's like
amazing.
Like the bluebells that aren't bluebells, they're Spanish knockoffs.
Well, I've not seen any true bluebells yet at all this year. They've all been the Spanish ones, which is a bit of a worry.
And it's a twist on purple.
Right.
That's all I know.
But the blue poppy, strangely though,
I think that is blue.
I think that is really blue.
And
Forget-me-nots, I also think are blue, sort of forget-me-nots. But like I say, a lot of flowers, like things like bluebells, I don't think they're blue.
No.
They should be called purple bells.
It's because when you look at it, it's closer to blue than purple.
I think it's when you see that carpet as well. It gives that sort of bluish hue, doesn't it?
It's so different to everything that's sort of come before, which I really love.
Yes.
And it just looks so poppy.
It does, and it knits beautifully. I have.
I'm going to find that out.
You will. I've finished my section.
Oh, my goodness.
And I'll be showing you.
All that is to come, though, in part 2. Oh, yes. She'll be finishing off the yarn.
Yes.
And knitting it into the blanket. And, of course, answering any questions that we've had since last time. Right now, though, it's time to find out, Kay Jones, what's off your needles?
I do have something, and Bryony is going to be beyond thrilled.
She's going to combust.
That I've finished these. I've finished Bryony's Stargate socks.
I can't believe it.
Look how lovely they are.
Amazing.
Oh. And these socks I put in, and you see that little sort of starburst pattern. I took that little stitch from my Clementine socks pattern. So in the Clementine socks, it's this, but there's also a rib element going on. Because I just wanted the stars to be the focus on this, that I took out the rib, and it's just the little stars. But I think it works really nice on the variegated as well, because it sort of captures the different colours with the little star stitch.
So did you dye that yarn too?
I did.
The blue as well?
Yes.
Amazing.
So yeah, I dyed both of these yarns that's Stargate themed. So the blue comes from, in the opening credits, no, not credits, that's the end. In the intro, there's lots of bright blue showing up. This, I've sort of interpreted it my way because I wanted this sort of vivid, brilliant blue. And then this colour is meant to represent the Stargate itself, because it's like this sort of metallic coloured object. And I'm really pleased, actually. I love this colour in particular. I think it's knit up really lovely. I've got a little bit left, which I will be crocheting into 2 squares. And then I'm going to see if I can make something. I don't know what. Maybe I'll do a little coaster or something for Bryony with the colours. You know, just something where I can work the 2 colours together. And she's got just a little something as well to remind her of it. Because I've knit these quite long as well. Longer than I normally do her socks, because she's wearing boots lately. And that's great. The problem is,
you need a longer sock.
You do need a longer sock, but also it's tough on socks wearing boots.
Right.
I've noticed that her socks are really felted. The ones that she's been wearing sort of recently, all on the back here, they're really felty, and it's because they're rubbing, you know, against the leather.
I suppose the thing is as well, because previously she was wearing school uniform.
Yeah.
And now she's not wearing school uniform.
No.
So whatever was going to happen, she was going to be wearing knitted socks a lot more.
That's true. Yeah, she's definitely wearing knitted. Well, she wears them it's all she wears. She doesn't wear anything but hand knitted socks. Honestly, I can't remember the last time. Oh, school socks were the last time I would have bought her actual socks. But no, she just wears hand knitted socks every single day. So they are getting a lot more wear. But I do have a lot of socks. I've actually got, in the cupboard upstairs, I've got a full basket of overflow socks. So I said to her the other day, actually, when I was putting some away, I said, oh, these are showing some wear. I think what we should do is pull out the overflow box and do some rotating, so that we can get some wear on these other ones. But, you know, I don't mind. You know, it's sad in a way to see socks with a lot of wear on them.
Yeah.
But then it's not, on the other hand, because she's wearing them and she loves them.
Exactly.
And I can knit more socks, you know, enjoy them. It's not a problem. So I did give these a block. I soaked them in the sink as I normally do. And not a speck of blue in the water. Go me. Because this is really saturated. So I was thrilled about that, you know, it's a good set of colour. So yeah, I'll be giving these to Bryony when she gets home from school, so she's going to be really happy. She might save them till the weekend, till we watch an episode, to sort of put them on the first time, but we'll see.
Cool. Speaking of gorgeous yarn.
Yes.
Speaking of wonderful patterns, I think it's time that we got back to the second part of my favourite blanket, and we got knitting some more of the fancy business.
Welcome back, everybody, to part 2 of my favourite blanket. So we got the yarn all dyed, and then I brought it in after it had cooled down. I gave it a lovely rinse in some wool wash. I had a bit of a problem with the green yarn. It had managed to tangle itself around. The 2 skeins had sort of tangled themselves around. But all I did was I sort of untangled it as much as I could when they were wet, left them to dry, and then when they were dry, I could even it out, and they were absolutely fine. I mean, if that ever happens to you, I would say don't try and mess with it too much when it's wet, because it's quite tricky to sort of move the yarn around when it's wet. Just leave it to dry and then you'll be able to sort it out. So yeah, got it all dried, and the yarn is here now and ready to start getting knitting. So I've got the 2, or I should say I've wound up 2 so you can see it in the skein. Isn't it pretty? That green's so lovely. I mean, I took a bit of artistic license with this green, if I'm honest. I mean, it probably wasn't quite this shade, but it's my project, isn't it? It's my blanket, and this is the sort of green that I wanted. I think I would say that it's more of a leaf green, the one on the actual poppy itself. This is slightly leaning a bit more minty, I would say, but I wanted that sort of fresh zingy green, which I think we've achieved with that. It looks super pretty. It's going to look so lovely knit together. One thing I have noticed is there must have been quite a lot of pink in one of those blues, because at a couple of points I can see where the dye's broken and there's some little specks of pink, which I love that. I think it's fascinating. So I can see here, I'm sure you won't be able to see it, but right here there's some little specks of pink, and there's a couple on the other skein as well, I've noticed. I think that's lovely. It's very individual, isn't it? And I think it's great when that happens. So yeah, I've got the 2 skeined up, and then the other 2 I'm going to wind in a moment. But before I do that, I have had a couple of questions since the last episode, so I thought I'd just take the opportunity to answer those. So the first question that I had was, how many sections are there to the blanket, and is each section a different colour? So I did cover this in the first episode, but I think it's worth just telling you again, because we're a good way through now, and it may be that you either can't remember or you didn't watch that first episode. So there are 12 sections to the blanket. We're just about to start knitting section 6, so we're right in the centre now. And yes, each of the 12 sections will be a different colour for me. So as you've seen today, we've dyed up 2 shades, and then we're going to knit those 2 shades together. And we're doing that all the way through the 12 sections of the blanket. So yeah, 12 sections, and yes, all of those sections will be a different colour. So the other question that I've had relates to the yarn itself, and where do I purchase my undyed yarn? So this is a really good question, and we're very fortunate in this country because there is a company and it's called Yarn Undyed, and you can actually purchase undyed yarn in smaller quantities, because when I used to dye yarn to sell, I actually used to purchase it wholesale from a different company, but you had to purchase quite a large amount. Whereas Yarn Undyed, they sell them as small as like individual skeins. You can just purchase individual skeins. It is cheaper the more you buy, and what I generally do is I buy packs, and in a pack there is usually either 5 times 100 grams, or in this case 10 times 50 grams, or you can buy packs of minis as well. And they do a whole range of bases. It's a really, really good supplier, and their service is excellent. If I order on a morning, I will generally get it the following day, you know, as long as they're both working days. They dispatch really quickly and they are delivered by a delivery service rather than like Royal Mail. And they're really good. Their prices are really reasonable. Excellent service, so I would recommend them. The base that I use is the 8515, and I find a lot of dyers now have discovered this base and are dyeing on it, which is brilliant because it is lovely. It's plumper than the 7525 that's more standard for socks. Yes, it's got a bit less nylon than that, so it's not quite as strong, but I've been using it to knit socks for quite a while now and not had any trouble at all using it. And I think it's worth sacrificing that little bit of nylon for the joy of knitting with a yarn that's plump and bouncy and just really lovely. So yeah, that's where I purchased my yarn from, and I would really highly recommend, and they do ship internationally as well. Okay, so let's wind the yarn and then we can get on with the knitting. So I've got my ball winder, I've got my Swift. Now, I don't know if you can see down here, but what I've been doing lately is I've been weighting this little feeder arm thing with my phone and a book, and I've been weighting it down because I've said this a couple of times actually, and people have tried to help me out and explain that theirs pulls out and clicks into place. Can you see this arm thing? Mine doesn't do that. It doesn't, can you see, it doesn't pull out. If it's in that position there, it's flopping around like this, and it pushes in really easily. So if I don't either hold on to it or weight it with something, it moves around like this and makes it impossible. So what I've been doing lately is I lean my phone there and then put a book on it. That's my journal. Yes, I know, I need a new ball winder and I've got to research it and just get one. I don't want one of those great big ones that's this big. I've had one of those before, and I don't have the space to store these things, and I just want something small. This is small and compact. What I want ideally is something like this, but that's better. Anyway, fingers crossed that the yarn winding gods are with us. So I'm just going to pop it on my Swift and then take off the ties and hope that this skein behaves itself. Let's see, shall we? So now I'm looking at the ends, and one of your ends will be coming from the inside of your skein and one will be coming from the outside. So you need to find the one that comes from the outside and that pulls off easily. And in theory, that's this one. Right, that looks all right. So let's see, let's find the end. Thread it through my makeshift feeder. Honestly, I've got to find a new one. Whew. Deep breath, everyone. Okay, well, I did feel it slip a couple of times, but let's see. You see, what happens is when it slips, the yarn stops winding on the cake itself and slips off, and that's when you get these bits here, look, because it slipped off the cake and dropped down. So I just tend to tuck them inside, and then when I reach that point in the knitting, you just pull them out. So we've wound it anyway, and it didn't take too long. I'm going to do the speckled skein now, and then we can get to the knitting. Okay, we are ready to start knitting. Now, section 6 is what we're on now, and it's exactly the same as section 5. The instructions are exactly the same. So on the last episode, what I did was I showed you the written instructions and said if you wanted to have a screenshot of it, then you can do that, and then you got the actual written instructions. So if you didn't do that and you want them now, then I would just say go back to the last episode and then have a look at it, and the instructions are all there. So I'm going to be working this section exactly the same as section 5. So what we've got is a 4-row repeat. We're doing decreases at the end of each row on rows 1 and 3. And then on rows 2 and 4, we will be doing an increase at the end. So that's how we maintain the stitch count. Because what we're doing now is we've started down here in the corner, we've worked out, and we're now doing the bit that sort of goes up like this. We're still working on the bias, but when you put it the right way, we're doing the bit that's going up. So 4-row repeat, and then on row 3, that's the row that's got the eyelets, because we've got some fancy business in this middle section. So row 3 is the one with the eyelets. So, like I said, if you want the written instructions, then if you're a patron, you can download the PDF that's attached. If you are not and you're just watching and following along, then like I said, go back to the last episode and you'll be able to screenshot the written instructions. So what I'm going to do now is start off row 1. I'll show you how I get started, and then I'll work to the end, and then I'll come back and just show you that decrease again, because the decrease, as I explained last time, is a little bit different. Before I get started, I just wanted to show you, a few people asked me to sort of see the edge up close, the decrease edge, where we're doing that lift over decrease, the LOD. And I've got it here down on my desk so you can have a close-up look of it. So this is our edge where we were doing the increases on our first sections. This is where we turn the corner, a lovely sharp corner it produces, and then this is the edge where we're doing the lift over decreases, and you can see how lovely and straight that is. It does produce just a tiny little blip, and it's more noticeable on the other side. If you look at the other side, you might see just little sort of blips where you've done that decrease. But having tried all the decreases I could think of, all the standard sort of decreases, I just think this was the neatest for me anyway. So I think it's lovely. I've not got a problem at all in how that looks. I think it's lovely and straight, and I really like working the decrease. It's just something a bit different. It's getting quite big now, the blanket. It's so lovely. So, if I hold it up for you, can get sort of a little look of it. Oh, I don't know how much is fitting in, but hopefully that gives you a good view of how much we've created. And I'm loving still the higher bamboos. So let's just sort out our yarn here. As always, 2 strands held together. So we've got the green and we've got that lovely speckled blue and gold. I'm going to get those ready, but the first 4 stitches, as we've been doing the whole way through this, I'm going to knit with my old colour yarn. So cut this, with a nice length attached, just so that you've got plenty to knit those first 4 stitches. And I'm doing it that way, as I've also explained previously, so that you get a nice crisp edge down here. Because if you change yarns right on the very edge, it's inevitably a little bit messy, because what makes a stitch nice and tight is actually the stitch following it. So if you stop knitting right on the edge here, there's no stitch following that end stitch, and you can't really ever tighten it up. You have to sort of work backwards through the fabric to tighten it up. So by knitting the first 4 stitches, it just keeps that edge really nice and neat. And I don't mind that you get a couple of stitches where you can see both colours. Doesn't bother me at all. This first row is just knit to the last 2 stitches and then work that lift over decrease. So the first 4 of those stitches I am going to knit with my old colour yarn, the lovely ranunculus. And now I'm going to bring in my new yarn. Always exciting to bring in new yarn. Leave a tail, loop it over, and then just start knitting. So on that second stitch, just make sure you are knitting with your, the working yarn rather than your tail. And you are away. So I'm just going to knit to the last 2 stitches, and then I will show you that decrease again. Okay, so we're now getting to the last 2 stitches. There we go. So we're going to work the lift over decrease. So what we do is we're going to lift this final stitch on our needle over the second to the final stitch. So what I do is I keep my finger right at the end here so that this stitch doesn't slip off. So I'm going to get my needle into that final stitch, keep my finger here, and then just lift it over. And then without stretching out that final stitch too much, knit it through the back loop. Whoops, both strands. There we go. And not stretching out that stitch actually is quite important, I find, in getting that really neat edge. So that's how we do the lift over decrease. So now we just turn and carry on. So row 2 is just knit to the last stitch and then knit from back. Row 3 is the one that's got the eyelets in it, so we work the eyelets across the row and then do the lift over decrease again on the last 2 stitches, and then row 4 is the same as row 2. So like I said before, go back to the last episode if you want to see the written instructions. You can then screenshot the picture if you want to, and you'll be away. So I'm now going to merrily knit away on my next fancy section. You can see all the lovely eyelets there. I hope you can see all the eyelets actually. Do they show up nicely? I think they do. So I'm going to work through this next section very happily. I can't wait to see how these 2 yarns knit up. So I hope you really enjoyed that. And if you're dyeing your yarn, I hope you enjoy this one. I can't wait to see how it knits up. I did do a little swatch with this already. I do every time, to be fair. But I deliberately only swatch just sort of a couple of little garter ridges because I don't really want to see the full loveliness of it until I knit it into my blanket. So I'm just swatching to make sure that the colours work together and everything like that. Yeah, so I can't wait to get knitting. So I'm going to do exactly that right now. I'm going to crack on with this section. I'm going to work all those lovely eyelets, and I will see you back next time for more My Favourite Blanket.
Now you're talking. Oh yes, 2 sections of fancy business, and I think you can really start to see what this blanket is going to become.
You can really see it now.
And you can, especially in yours.
Yes.
Because you've knitted through the section.
I have. I've knit through the whole section, and these are my little leftovers. So as with the rest of the colours, I've got about 7 or 8 grams of each left over. So plenty of leeway, for different gauges, etc. So
Kay, of course, mentioned, you get the blanket out. Kay, of course, mentioned last episode, if you want to see the written out bit of the fancy business. I've linked that in the show notes below so you can go and refer to the last episode. But you can, of course, as well, just access the written pattern if that's what you'd prefer. $2 is what it costs, or your local equivalent. And you can access the pattern up to date, up to part 6 and all the parts that have come before. But also as well, if you access the pattern at $2, you're also going to access to our latest issue of Knitability, and also you'll be able to watch our latest patron only show, which is when we launched the Summer of Stitching, which was very fun.
One thing that's just reminded me, actually, I was thinking those socks I'm knitting for Dan, I think in the next Knitability, I'm going to write an article about them and I'm going to pop in the charts.
Oh, cool.
So that if you want to knit your own, then you can do that.
So that'll be out later on in the summer, isn't it?
Yeah.
And the latest issue of Knitability is always available to all our patrons. So bronze, radio show listener, silver, gold and platinum.
Yeah.
So just $2.
Amazing, really. What can you buy for $2 these days? Yes, so here's my section. I'm trying to arrange it in such a way that... Oh, look at that. So can you see that? Yes, you can. Oh, doesn't it look lovely? And it's really looking... So, right, you know, it goes on down to here, the first section. It's really starting to look how I envisaged it in my head. Because the colours, the way that I wanted this blanket to work is that I wanted it to look bright and fun, but not in your face bright. You know, I wanted it to be sort of light, bright, fun colours. And I'm really happy with the way it's looking. So yeah, you can see, here's the section that you just saw me dye up. So this is what I mean when I say it's the tonal sort of background yarn that gives the overall feel of the colour. And because we've had blue down here and we've had purple just gone, I didn't want to have the blue of the flower to be the sort of dominant colour here, because it just wouldn't have looked aesthetically pleasing to me. So that's why I switched it, and I'm really glad I did, because this green is just so pretty. You can see the eyelets there, look. And then seeing these little shots of blue and then the gold as well coming through. It's super pretty. So yeah, I've knit through that. And actually, do you know when I was knitting that first row across, and I said, I've no idea how long it takes me. And I think I said it takes me about 5 minutes. It doesn't. Dan had left the camera rolling and he says, I'll have a look. It actually took me 9 minutes. So it takes me 9 minutes to knit one row. So I don't know what... I don't think I'm a particularly fast knitter. And this is now, because, you know, as it gets heavier and a bigger item, I think that can also slow you down a little bit. But actually, when I worked that out, the amount of time, I think it worked out to about 5 hours of knitting to knit the section, which in itself doesn't sound too bad, does it? So what I do when I know facts like that is, right, I know that over 5 days, if I just put in an hour each day, I'll get it finished. And that's kind of how I work things. And then I know that I've just got that smaller target and it doesn't seem as daunting. So if you think the same way I do, then that might be, you know, an idea for you in sort of figuring out how to get through the section in time for the next colour.
Cool. My favourite blanket will be back in June. Next time, The Rise and Fall of the Monasteries is back, and we're entering the world of Richard the Lionheart and Devious King John. Yeah. We'll also be visiting our first priory of the series, and if you're wondering what a priory is, you'll find out in the next episode. Right now, it's time for the Endy Bits.
Endy Bits!
And Kay has bought some stripy yarn.
Oh my goodness, right. This has been another obsession that I've had over the past few weeks, and you'll find out all about this obsession in the next episode, because I'm going to talk about the thing that I'm knitting with the self-striping yarn. I said this to Bryony, and she's like, never heard of that. I got a bit of analysis paralysis with this situation, because I'm designing something that uses self-striping yarn, right? And I just had this image in my head of what I wanted this thing to look like. And I'm actually knitting I'm knitting 2 samples at the moment, and I'm just about to put a third one on the needles, and I'm going to show you the yarn for that. But the 2 samples I'm knitting with yarn that I've also got another skein of, and I purchased this recently, and it's absolutely fantastic yarn. I love this yarn, and I love the yarn dyer. She's so lovely. But this yarn is from Freckled Whimsy. So the lady's name, the dyer's name is Carrie, and she just dyes the most lovely yarn. So she is based in America, but I thought, do you know what? I'm going to treat myself to some of her yarn. This is one that I haven't used yet, but the other two are on the needles, and I will show you those next time. But this one was a club yarn. She does a Harry Potter club, and so I got this one as a mystery yarn. It's just gorgeous. She has released a photo of the colours now, so I'm safe to show you. But it was called Rictus Sempra, which is a spell. Just lovely. And look at the colours. So I'm saving this one for a bit further into the year, because Harry Potter always makes me think of sort of autumn. But yeah, I'll show you the other two pairs that are on the needles using her yarn, using Carrie's yarn, on the next show. But when I started knitting with them, they're both lovely, but I just wanted another option. So I went a bit nuts, and I just couldn't stop looking. I think when you have, for me, when I've got an idea in my head and an image, I'm like, I just can't stop looking until I find what I'm looking for. And I'm not even sure that what I've got in my head exists. But I've got another one that I'm going to cast on, maybe today actually, that I'm hopeful might produce the sort of image that's in my head. And this one is from Fab Funky Fibres, which is a UK company. And the particular colour that I'm going to cast on is called Big Top. So a nice circusy sort of theme. And I've wound these actually. They come in 2 50-gram balls. So I've wound them, but the colours you can see there. You get a section where it's sort of black, white, black, and then you've got pink and blue and an orangey yellow. And, you know, the colours are very fun. And I like the way that the stripe sequencing works. And it didn't come with a mini, but I've got this pink, which is the Cascade Heritage, that I think will work as a coordinating. So I've got that one from Fab Funky Fibres. And when I ordered, I actually placed 2 orders. I've got another one as well. You can see my obsession. But when she sent me the order, she sent me some extra yarn. I was like, what's this? I didn't order this. And she just put a note in saying, I've added in a couple of extra yarns, do with them as you wish. I was gobsmacked, so I immediately sent her a thank you. And I'm going to use these as prizes for something we've got coming up later in the year. But she sent me these 2 gorgeous rainbow sock sets. I mean, how lovely is that? And they're self-striping as well. And then the final one I've bought, I absolutely love this yarn. Love it. It's from the Yarn Badger. Again, this is another UK company. And this one is called Bubblegum Rainbow. And let's just stop for a second to admire the beauty of that. And the way that this works is you've got pink stripes interspersed with then a rainbow running down. So pink, and then the rainbow, pink, rainbow, pink. Do you know what I mean? And then you've got a coordinating pink. And I love this, but the pinkness, I thought, might put off people who don't like pink. Because I know that when you design something and you have images of that design, the way that the image looks and the way that people, you know, prefer colour and things like that can influence things with regards to the design. So I will definitely be using this fantastic colour, but maybe not right now. So yeah, I just wanted to show you those. And like I said, next time I will be showing you the thing that has been my other obsession. I just want to get a bit further into it.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's it. We'll be back in 2 weeks with another Bakery Bears video show, and the radio show will of course be back next week. So tune in next week and we'll be giving you all our opinions on the coronation.
Oh, yes.
So don't miss it.
Yes.
So thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Thanks, everybody.
For a brand new video
see you
show.
Soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Sitting and knitting, it's Dan and Kay, the bakery bears. Enthusiasm's not quitting for Dan and Kay, the bakery bears. They'll take you to fabulous places of which their favorites they'll share. You better buy a pattern and get yourself a bakery bear. You'll find yourself in a castle while watching the bakery bears. It never feels like a hassle to sit and watch the bakery bears. What's on your shelf or